So everybody, thanks so much for listening. If you're listening to us on one of the 30 radio stations around the country, we thank you for that. And please keep listening and tell your friends and family. If you are listening to us on the YouTube or one of the podcasting sites, we appreciate that. And please share this interview and subscribe if you can. It's all free. And we're going back to my native land of Rhode Island and some of the issues that are going on there with Councilwoman Nicole Renzulli here on Fire Breathing Rob. She is from the city of Cranston, Rhode Island. We'll talk a little bit about what she does and some issues that are going on in that city. Councilwoman, thanks so much for your time today. Greatly appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate you inviting me on your show.
Can you go in depth on what you do every day?
Well, so it's not a full-time job in Cranston, Rhode Island. In some parts of the country, it is. It's a full-time legislative position. But in Cranston, Rhode Island, it's a part-time job. And I am a citywide councilwoman. So rather than being elected in a small, geographic neighborhood of the city, there are 3 positions that are across the city. So citywide, I cover the whole city. Anyone in the city of Cranston is my constituent. Basically, on a day-to-day basis, a lot of what I do is handling constituent complaints. If someone's trash didn't get picked up, if they have a pothole, if someone's neighbor's yard is overgrown and there are rats, anything having to do with that. When are my taxes due? When can I leave out bulky items, constituent things like that. Since the pandemic, hit, I took office during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of information sharing, I think, for my job. I don't know that it's in the description of what my role is, but it's telling people where to go for what they need within the city for city services. So when, either vaccinations or if there was a mask mandate or what park was closed and until when, I think we are the disseminators of information. But other than that, on a, what would be in the charter is we write the legislation. So if a new law is going to come into the city of Cranston, it's called an ordinance, and write and vote on that. We also have to vote on zoning changes and various things that have to do with development. And we also vote on the mayor's budget. So the mayor puts in the budget, and then we have the opportunity to move the money around, vote on it. And that's what goes into effect. So either raising taxes, lowering taxes, what money we give to schools, stuff like that. That's the bulk of our job. And then we have different committees. So I'm the chairwoman of the Safety Services and Licensing Committee. So new businesses would come before me to get a business license, and we vote on that through the committee. And renewals, we do show cause hearings. So if, say, a business is selling alcohol to minors, I could bring them forward and we could actually decide to take their license or fine them. And we have various committees. Usually the party with the majority has people on all the committees. The finance committee, ordinance for the laws, safety services, public works, which has to do with, the plowing, and parks and recreation. So we basically do a little bit of everything.
Okay, I want to just reframe here because I want to get into the next question. But for people that are just tuning in, again, this is Councilwoman Nicole Renzulli, City of Cranston, Rhode Island. She is the councilwoman there, one of the councilwomen in citywide for that matter. Let's just keep going into this. Now, obviously, there was just an election around the country in Rhode Island, of course, also. I'm sure, as you were campaigning, you were talking to a lot of people on the ground. What were they expressing to you as big issues facing the city of Cranston?
Facing the city of Cranston, I'd say people want to have good city services. That's number one, like we just said. And they want to know that their tax money is going towards worthy things, and that the money that we recently got from the federal government, the American Rescue Plan money, they want to know what that is going to. A lot of people did talk about, when at the doors, talk about national level things such as abortion and Social Security and things that I have to assure people that I'm never going to vote on. We can have a conversation about it, but I hope that they know that I have nothing to do with that. And but people still want to talk about it because that's what they see on TV. We had a congressional seat that was up here in Cranston. It included Cranston for congressional district 2, and a former mayor of Cranston, Alan Fung, was running for that seat. So questions that came up for him at the national level kind of trickled down, I think, as well.
Right. So there are some really big issues for the city of Cranston, Rhode Island that are going on. One of the issues really started to take place, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Nicole, on this, but it started to take place during the election season of 2022 with the pallet houses that they're trying to put in the Pastori Center over in Cranston. There's a lot of stuff in that area. I believe the Attorney General has an office there. Obviously, there's the ACI. There's also the Harrington Hall, and we can go, with the list down there. There's so many other things there. Regardless of that, can you inform the viewers that maybe are not from around the state of Rhode Island, or even if they are, they haven't heard about this issue too much because it was covered, but it wasn't really covered as in depth as it should have been.
So, housing is an issue across the country. It's an issue in Rhode Island. So it's an issue in Cranston. But what you're talking about is the idea of putting temporary pallet shelters. Pallet's actually the brand, but it's just a shelter that kind of looks almost like a shed. And it's used for homeless population in different parts of the country. And in May, I think it was maybe Go Local that broke the story of the recommendation from a professor at Providence College who has to do with the homeless community. He suggested that Governor McKee place 500 of these pallet shelters in the Pastori Center, and that it would be great for the population who was living in tents, and that's the unhoused community, I believe now, sits somewhere in the 400s. And it's usually when it gets closer to winter that becomes a bigger, more public concern. I personally think it's a concern year round, but it seems to just come out more publicly when we get closer to the winter. Last year, the governor's office and his administration, he placed the unhoused within the Nilo Hotel, which is in Warwick. And as far as I know, I won't pretend to know exactly, but the community was not really aware that this was happening. But it happened, and there was an increase of crime in the area. And I think people were just upset that they didn't know what was happening. I can't say that I know a ton about the kind of services that were offered there to the unhoused, but I know that when they came to Cranston about this pallet housing, I don't think that they asked for 500. That was a number that was the last number that we heard in the spring, and the suggestion. But when the governor's office came to the mayor's office and reopened this idea, it came to the councilman in that ward, who I work with closely. It's Ward 6 is where the Pastori Center is, near Garden City. He said, what do you think about this? And really, I wanted to know if there was any sort of plan to go along with it, or if it was just, hey, it's almost winter, the clock is ticking, we need to put people somewhere, they don't want us back at the Nilo. There was at some point in time before the Nilo, they wanted to put this in Cranston at where we put a COVID hospital, and the mayor was like, no. So now it came back around with no really plan. So my main concern is that how many were there going to be? How are they going to get electricity? Where are people going to go to the bathroom? Because anything I read about it, there's no bathrooms. Is there going to be wraparound services? Because at Harrington Hall, there's 100, maybe 112 beds. And I know every day, for 3 years, I've seen the same individual outside, at Sockanosset Crossroads intersection, panhandling because they need to leave in the morning from Harrington Hall. And it was concerning to me that they would be perhaps adding to that number, because Cranston already has the largest men's shelter in the state of Rhode Island. So how are we going to add to that at the last minute? It's a strain on our police, and a strain on our fire, and a strain on our rescue. And I need more. need more information. And I want to know that the people you're taking off the streets, if you're not going to actually help them with wraparound services, then we're just moving them from a tent to a box. And I don't think that that's fair. You know, if people aren't getting from Harrington Hall at, 7 in the morning when they get dismissed, if they're not getting on a bus or something and going into Providence, then that they're kind of wandering around Cranston because they're not being serviced at that time, to my understanding. And I recently even, pulled over because I give the same gentleman, get him something to eat or give him a couple bucks. And I said, I have to ask you, are you getting help during the day from the state of Rhode Island? I need to know for my own personal reason. He said, no. And like, that was it. We didn't go into too much more. I'm stopped at a light, so I didn't have time to have a huge conversation with him. But I wanted to know because I do have a friend that works at Eleanor Slater Hospital, which is the behavioral health hospital that's also in the Pastore Center, that just recently did receive more funding from the state. But I don't know if you know the backstory. They've had, Medicaid billing problems with the federal government for several years because the bed ratio for psychological treatment and regular treatment has been off. So they're supposed to become a standalone psychiatric hospital. And I know that I've been told, at least from my friend, that oftentimes people are discharged from there because they don't have enough beds, and they should be there. But where they go is they go right to Harrington Hall, which is right there on the same campus. And I don't like to fake help people. Like, if we're going to help people, if people have, mental health issues, and that is the root of their homelessness problem, then I'm sure the city of Cranston would partner with the state to actually do that. But I don't see that as what this is.
Well, that's correct, because I have a friend and she works at Butler and she does some therapy stuff on the side. And she told me specifically the same thing, that at Butler, if you was to come in there and say, hey, you need some sort of help and you're not considered a threat to yourself, they throw you right back out. So that is correct. That's what, because she told me that also.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a problem. So we're just adding more people to the problem. And, and I know that people need to go somewhere. So if they can come up with a good plan on how to give wraparound services, whether it be job training or addiction services or behavioral health or a little bit of everything, because people don't, just end up without a home for no reason. But everyone has a different reason as to why. And some people are chronically homeless, or some people, the electricity rates just went up 47% in Rhode Island. And so some people might not be able to pay them, and they're going to end up on it. It could be anybody, it could be families. I just think that we have to actually help the people so that we're not in this situation next year and the year after and the year after. It has to be, I know Crossroads has focuses a lot on, transitioning to permanent housing. And I don't see a pallet housing as really transitional. It's more just emergent, and they need to be prepared if they're going to utilize it.
Well, Nicole, I was told that there's a lot of issues at Harrington Hall in general. So if, the issues that, and you can go more in depth on that, but if they're already having a lot of issues in Harrington Hall, and then they're going to build, regardless if it's 500, 300, 200 of these pallet houses, there's going to be issues again there, because these people can, what are they going to do? They're going to kick them out at 7 a.m. These people are going to think it's their houses, and they're going to come from all over the state. Who knows? Drugs, alcohol, sexual activity in these places. There's houses that, regular homes that aren't that far away from these places. As you said, people can walk out, and they've walked to Socanox Crossing. This leads to crime. This leads to the problems that are already there. So maybe if you want to go a little bit in depth in how, Harrington Hall already has its issues, and how that, more of these houses. And again, we're not discriminating about people that are down on their luck. I think that that's a big issue in Rhode Island. You talked about the electricity rates. That's a problem. Affordable housing in the state is a huge problem, and around the country. So we're not bashing people that are homeless. The state has to step up their game and figure out some ways to do this. This is not on the city of Cranston, the town of Johnston, the city of Providence. This is somebody, the state issue, and the General Assembly has to step in, get off their behind and do something.
Yep. So has been a lot of money that was earmarked for housing that came in from the federal government. I want to say, it might not be exactly right, $250 million, I believe, is what the governor put aside for housing. I don't know that, I don't believe that all of that is for helping the homeless, but I know part of it is for the affordable housing bill they want to do. I just think, like you said, the state needs to take a lead and say, this is what we want to do, and needs to get buy-in from cities and towns, and how that they're going to do their fair share. In Cranston, we've been doing our fair share for years by having Harrington Hall. It's the largest men's shelter, and it is where most of the state's sex offenders end up being, because it's far enough away from schools, as far as I understand. So putting the pallet shelters there, my first question was, okay, well, we're not going to put women and children there, right? Because we're already, the reason that we are able to house sex offenders here is because it's away from a school. So what are we doing there? There was, and I don't want to say that everyone who's homeless is a sex offender. I don't want to say that anyone who's a sex offender, is necessarily going to be a repeat offender. I'm not saying that. Like you said, this is just factually, during when this was being proposed, someone from Harrington Hall was arrested at the Cranston Public Library for pleasuring himself in the open, sitting right next to someone else. So we can't say that it doesn't happen, and that my constituents and the constituents of Councilman Riley in Ward 6, who originally brought this to me, they're concerned. And I can see why they would be concerned. And we want to help. We're doing our part in helping. I know that the rescue that ends up in that facility, I believe the director of administration said something like $1 million worth of runs in that area. Cranston doesn't get compensated for that. So we're doing our part, and I know that everyone could always do more. But what is everyone else doing other than the city of Providence, who I'm sure houses more homeless than in Cranston? But what about, Cumberland, Warwick, Lincoln, Smithfield, Johnston? Like, everyone could do a little bit, and it could all be, there should be a plan. Obviously, we have a housing czar. I've said this before. We have a well-compensated housing czar. That's someone's position in the state of Rhode Island. And I think that person should have a multi-level plan, and it should be a pretty good one. And they've had some time to do it. So where is it?
And these people are making $150,000, $200,000, and they don't seem like they're producing much as far as ideas. And the governor wants to give all these people raises that are in these, running the health department, all these, places, but there's not a lot of production there. But I do want to get into this, because you guys in the city council, and you can correct me if I'm, describing this wrong to the viewers and the listeners. I was told that you guys voted against this, and it was a 4-2 vote. Is that correct, or am I off on that?
Yes, we voted for a resolution. So it was a resolution put forward by Councilman Riley and myself, telling the governor's office that we do not want pallet housing in the Pastoria Center in Cranston. And so in ordinance committee, 4 voted in favor for that resolution. So basically saying, no, we're not having this, and 2 were against. That still has to go to the full council in order to go up or down. And I don't really know which way it's going to go. It could be struck down, because a lot of people, housing activists did come forward and say, yeah, okay, Cranston did this, but how can you turn people away in the cold? And I don't want to turn anyone away in the cold. My point is, why Cranston, and why are we waiting this long? And why are we encouraging, we're like enabling the administration to wait until now to float these ideas? Because they didn't say we were definitely doing this in Cranston. They brought it to the mayor's office and said, what would you think if we did this in Cranston? But, you know, in the back of my mind, I know that this was already suggested to them in May. So why in October are you bringing it to the mayor's office? Why not June, July? So we could have until now to figure out if it works or if it doesn't work or where it might work better. So now, you know, I've had people say, you're a horrible person. You don't want to help homeless people. That's not the case. The case is we can't keep saving, you know, the administration's butt in Cranston just because they have these state facilities that they can do whatever they want there. Even if we vote to say, no, we don't want this in Cranston, a resolution is not a law. It's more of a suggestion. It's getting your voice heard. Hey, this is what we want you to do. Please do it. But they could still do whatever they want there. They could throw this there tomorrow. We could do nothing about it.
Do you feel like this could be a political ploy by the governor? And I know this is all of an opinion piece because obviously the election was there. He's trying to get the progressive vote. Obviously, the election's over. But besides that, Cranston is more so, you know, there are parts of Cranston that are Democratic. But, you know, Cranston, I feel like is a more, you know, conservative part. You know, we've had Mayor Fung, obviously. Mayor Hopkins is a Republican. It's 2 Republican mayors. You know, Johnston, where I'm at, it's, you know, it's Democrats mostly, although they've been changing. They did vote for Ashley Kalis as the governorship. Regardless of that, what do you think about that? Do you think that could be a play there?
I mean, it's a topic that comes up, that there's a certain base of Democrats who are, you know, very pro this type of thing. But I could say, I mean, I don't think that the governor was using it necessarily as some kind of political ploy. I just think that there's a lot going on, and it's the time of year when people realize, hey, it's cold, and there's people starting to gather on the State House steps and have demonstrations, and then they have to do something. And you know what? Let's go to Cranston where we can do it, whether they want us to do it or not. They did ask. He didn't just throw it there. You know, I know that Governor McKee and Mayor Hopkins do have a good relationship. You know, they communicate with each other, but this had to be for the constituents in that area who didn't all necessarily show up to speak, but who wrote emails, who called, who said, we don't want this here. That's our job, you know, to speak up and say something about. It's not my job to create a housing plan. That's the housing czar's job. So we are doing our job by saying, we don't want this here. And, you know, that's just kind of how we saw it.
So let's put the exclamation point on this topic with this, because I do have some audience questions that I want to ask you, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. So what can viewers do to fight against this if they are listening from Rhode Island or Cranston specifically?
Well, they can write to either myself, Nicole, Nicole, for Cranston @gmail.com. And, you know, give a statement in which I will submit to the clerk for public record when we vote on this at the end of the month. Or they could come in person to our city council meeting, which I believe should be 7 p.m. the last Monday of the month. So the Monday after Thanksgiving, and they could come and give public testimony then. They could call the governor's office, write the governor's office, or call Mayor Hopkins' office as well.
Okay.
And just tell people. They could tell their neighbors and whoever it is that they think, you know, this would be important to, because it's very difficult. You know, even though we put stuff on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, I've had people say, I would have never known about this unless somebody told me at the bus stop, and they have a problem with it and they would have never came to speak. But activists and people who are in the know, they always show up because they know what's going on.
I didn't know anything about this. I know Channel 10 and 12 ran with the story like once or twice, but it was very low coverage. And there's still basically zero coverage on this issue as far as that goes. You know, and just to say, it is getting cold out right now. I was out today. It was pretty chilly out today, but before, you know, this week, it was fairly warm out. I mean, we've had a very warm, you know, somewhat winter, if you want to call it that, so far. mean, I believe on Saturday it was like 75 degrees. So
Yeah.
I mean, it hasn't really gotten that cold except for, starting this week. So, I mean, they can say what they want, but I mean, fact is fact. So I do hope if people live in Rhode Island or live in Cranston, if they have family members, to get the word out about this. Regardless of how your feeling is, people should get out and, talk about their feelings on these issues. It's extremely important. I want to get into these audience questions. Again, for people listening, Councilwoman Nicole Renzulli here on Fire Breathing Rob. She is a councilwoman for the city of Cranston over in Rhode Island. You know, you are a Republican in the state of Rhode Island. We saw what happened with the Republican Party nationally, but in the state of Rhode Island too. I was a big, I've came out on the air about this. I'm going to have her campaign manager on tomorrow, Ashley Kalis. I was a big supporter of her. I also interviewed a lot of the other candidates that were running statewide, Aaron Gukian, James Lathrop, as far as that goes. There was a lot of energy, it seemed, with the Republican Party as far as the election goes. But it seemed like, I don't know what happened. I hear a lot of talk about the mail ballots. That's another story for another day. As a Republican, what were you hearing and seeing in Cranston? Obviously, we had the same congressional district race. I thought Alan Fung, who was ahead the whole way in polls, but he ended up losing by like 2 points, 3,000 some odd votes. What is your opinion on, what happened with the Republicans that seemed like they had the win at their back for most of the race?
Well, I mean, I thought Alan Fung was going to win. I'm a huge supporter of Alan Fung, and I thought that him winning was going to help some people down ballot as well. People were going to come out to vote for Alan, and then they would vote along the way as well.
Sure.
And I know that Ashley Kalis was driving out the vote as well. She had a good get out the vote operation. But unfortunately, as we saw in Rhode Island, people don't appreciate outsiders. If you are not born and raised in Rhode Island and you don't know where, Benny's was on Atwood Avenue, people, for some reason, that is, that disqualifies you from being a leader. And, it's not the same thing as if you're going to go work at Google, like they don't ask you things like that. In the corporate world, that's not a thing. And I don't know if it is in politics everywhere, but the term carpetbagger has been around for a long time, and they like you to say you're born here, you're from here, you went to the schools, and it does give you a certain advantage in that. Well, if you're born and raised here, you have family here, and you played Little League here, and you start to know a range of people who organically support you. And I think that unfortunately, when you're lacking that organic support, you're just making friends, 9 months before it's an election. It's going to be hard to win. But I think Ashley, put up a good fight and, got people out there. But because she was getting people out there, the governor was going to get people out there too. And his efforts, the Democratic Party does a really good job working together, even after a primary where it was very close. So they could be clawing each other's eyes out and then be best friends the next day. Because in my limited experience in politics, to Democrats, any Democrat will do over a Republican. You could be I say to people all the time, people that I know growing up, they said, oh, we know you're a great person and you would do a great job, but why don't you be a Democrat? Like, you're a Republican. I can't believe you're a Republican. And that's a thing that goes across the board. And it's kind of, to me, it's insane, but people really feel that way. And I guess they feel that way. I can see how they feel that way when they start to get into the national races where things become extremely extreme. And I'm a moderate.
Same.
Some of my ideas can even be considered progressive, but I'm still a Republican. And I think that, being in the middle is where most people actually lie on issues, but they have to pick one or the other. And unfortunately, it didn't work out for us, because I think it looked like it was going to work out for Republicans, which drew out more Democrats. Sometimes when you look like you're winning, other people are like, oh, we're going to come in then and we're going to make sure you don't. I think that's what happened.
What's the state of the party in Rhode Island?
Well, I am encouraged by, even though we lost and we thought we were going to win something, I am encouraged by the group of candidates that work together. Aaron Buchanan is a great example of, he was a great candidate, and I did not know him prior to this election. So I know he knows Mayor Ellen Fung, and I didn't know him, and I hope that he runs again. I think he was a great leader in the party. The party really came together and had a lot more energy during this this session. Whether it was turned out to be, I think it became a blue wave because they saw a red wave coming. And if it was just business as usual, then maybe so many people wouldn't have come out during a midterm election, because that hasn't been the experience in the past. So I think we're showing, some promise by scaring the Democrats a little bit.
I think it was the abortion
issue. I want to look at it.
Nicole, it was the abortion. I think it was the abortion issue in the end. And a lot of people like me care, nothing against the abortion issue, but I do care more about kitchen table issues than the abortion issue as far as my list. But a lot of people didn't feel that same way. So that's that.
And they don't, and it just, abortion is already codified in the state of Rhode Island. Right. So everyone already has a right to go get one if they would like to. I do understand saying, expanding that for Medicaid and for state workers, which still have the right to go get an abortion. I think that's something that's never talked about. It's just not going to be funded through their health insurance, but they're not banned from going to get it. And I guess I would like to see a fiscal note on how people's health insurance is going to go up in Rhode Island if it does become mandated across the board that insurers carry it. Because I used to work for the health insurance commissioner, 6 or 7 years ago before I had my children, and state mandates do drive up the cost of commercial health insurance. So when everyone's insurance is going up 10% and nobody understands why, it's a little bit more complicated, and you need actuaries to tell you, but it's from mandating things like this. So if everyone's okay with paying more, then okay.
Yeah, well, not me, but anyways, we'll move forward. So, and these are some questions from some viewers that audience, they heard you were going to come on. We put your profile out there before we doing the show. These are some questions they had. So someone's asking me that you coach 2 teams, you work, you serve the people of Cranston, and you have 3 kids to take care of. How do you not get burned out?
I won't lie. I am currently burned out. I think that's just part of my personality and my lifestyle. I mean, I've always kind of been, a multitasker. My parents used to get mad at me because I would join every club and run and want to be in honors classes and still want to have a job. And that's just, I'm kind of a busybody. If I have nothing to do, I find something else to do. Or sometimes I catch up on sleep because I don't do a ton of that. I just figure, if I can bring something to the table, then I want to be at that table. Sometimes it means I'm, shuffling plates in the air, but I'm happy to do it for as long as I can. And as long as my kids are taken care of, my kids come with me to a lot of the things that I do, because I'm fortunate to be able to do that. Then everything seems okay. If it gets to the point where that's not the case, then I'm willing to give up different things so that I can spend more time with my kids.
Last 2 questions. So obviously right now you are serving the city of Cranston as a councilwoman. Any higher political aspirations down the road? Obviously we're not asking in office, but down the road.
I would say that I would love to continue to serve the city of Cranston as a councilwoman for as long as they'll have me. And it's really my goal to learn about every department in the city of Cranston administratively. I have, go on police ride-alongs. I go into the clerk's office and want to learn about their licensing. I'd like to learn the ins and outs of, the administrative portion of the government. One day, if the opportunity arises, maybe I would run for mayor. I do love serving the city of Cranston. born and raised here. I want to raise my family here and do that. I guess I could see myself, if my schedule allowed, being a state rep or being a senator. It would depend on where I would best serve people and what opportunities arise. I would never just jump if I wasn't wanted somewhere. I want to serve where I can best serve.
Well, we definitely need people like you in the State House. So if you ever did go there, we'd welcome that. Last question. As far as your career so far, and I know it's been short as a councilwoman, but you've gotten a lot of things done and worked with a lot of people, as you stated throughout the interview, Nicole. What do you feel like is your biggest accomplishment so far in your short career as a councilwoman?
Let's see. My biggest accomplishment. I guess working, with the mayor's administration, like kind of alongside of them, and opening up after COVID it's still a road kind of that we're on. We're still getting businesses back up. So working with the Economic Development Office and kind of partnering with the administration, looking at the administration as my partner. I'll go in there almost like I work there, and I don't, but they're open to my ideas, and I'm open to helping them achieve their goals, because that's how I think a city should run, and then taking those things back to the council and saying, hey, what do you think about this? And how can we make it more palatable so it will work? So I think reopening Cranston would probably be what I would say if I had to say a general accomplishment.
It was a big job and still is. So we'll end there. And again, for people listening, how can they find more about you, follow you on social media, Nicole? If you could just give all those social media.
So on Twitter, I'm Nicole for Cranston. So Nicole, @ Nicole, and then the number 4, and then Cranston. They can find me on Facebook, just putting in my name, Nicole Renzulli. It'll come up Nicole for Cranston or Nicole Citywide Councilwoman. I think on Instagram, I think I'm also Nicole for Cranston. Try and stick to the same name so I could be found anywhere. And the city's website as well. If you just go to the City of Cranston website, search for Nicole Renzulli, I'll pop up there.
Councilwoman Nicole Renzulli here on Fire Breathing Rob. She is a councilwoman in the city of Cranston, Rhode Island. Nicole, thanks so much for your time. Greatly appreciate it, and hope to do this again down the road.
Thank you so much. Have a great weekend and happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.